In the summer of 1873, 4 identical men arrived at the port of Savannah, Georgia, aboard the merchant vessel Bremen's Pride. Heinrich, Wilhelm, Friedrich, and Gustav Kellner were so physically indistinguishable that even their own mother, Margareta Kellner, relied on small scars she had secretly made behind each son's ear to tell them apart. What happened next would baffle local law enforcement and challenge everything the community believed about human identity. For over a year, witnesses would swear under oath that they had seen the same man in multiple places at impossible times, conducting business across town while simultaneously being observed miles away. The sheriff's office accumulated 43 separate witness testimonies, each describing encounters that defied physical possibility. When investigators finally uncovered the truth, they found something so disturbing that local authorities quietly buried the case to avoid public panic. The methods these brothers used were so unsettling that no scientific institution would agree to study their techniques, fearing the implications of what coordinated human deception could accomplish. Before we continue with the story of the Kellner family and their arrival in Georgia, make sure to subscribe to our channel for more dark historical mysteries like this one. And let us know in the comments what state or city you're listening from. We love hearing from our community of mystery seekers worldwide. The story that unfolded in Savannah would prove that sometimes the most frightening criminals are those who can make you question your own eyes. Savannah in 1873 was a city rebuilding itself after the devastation of Sherman's march to the sea. The port welcomed European immigrants with cautious optimism, especially those who arrived with apparent wealth and business credentials. The Kellner family presented themselves as prosperous Bavarian merchants seeking to establish import operations in the recovering South. Klaus Kellner, the family patriarch, was a distinguished man in his 50s who spoke English with only a slight accent and carried letters of introduction from German trading houses. His wife Margaret was a stern woman who kept to herself, managing household affairs while her husband pursued business opportunities. Their 4 sons, Heinrich, Wilhelm, Friedrich, and Gustav, were 27 years old and claimed to serve as partners in the family enterprise. The family rented a comfortable house on Bull Street and quickly established themselves among Savannah's merchant community. Klaus joined the local business association and began developing relationships with cotton factors, shipping agents, and warehouse operators. To their neighbors, the Kellners appeared to be exactly what the struggling local economy needed: foreign investors with capital and European connections. But there was something unsettling about the 4 brothers that even sophisticated businessmen couldn't quite identify. They were absolutely identical in appearance. Same height, same build, same wheat-colored hair, same pale blue eyes, even the same mannerisms and way of speaking. When dressed similarly, it was genuinely impossible to tell them apart. Mrs. Victoria Hammond, wife of a prominent cotton merchant, encountered the brothers at several social gatherings and later confided to friends that they made her uncomfortable. "It's not natural for grown men to be so identical," she told her husband. "When one speaks, the others nod at exactly the same moments. They finish each other's sentences in ways that seem almost rehearsed." The brothers adapted to Savannah's business environment with remarkable speed. Within weeks, they had established relationships with every major commercial enterprise in the city. Heinrich seemed to specialize in banking and finance. Wilhelm focused on shipping and transportation. Friedrich handled social connections. And Gustav managed what appeared to be family correspondence and record-keeping. Their business acumen was impressive, but their knowledge seemed too extensive for newcomers. They knew which merchants were struggling financially, which families had money troubles, which shipping schedules offered the best opportunities, and which local officials might be influenced by the right approach. Mr. Jonathan Whitfield, a respected cotton factor, noticed that Heinrich possessed unusually detailed knowledge of cotton markets and banking procedures for someone supposedly new to American commerce. He speaks about our local business as if he's been studying it for months, Whitfield told his partners. Either he's remarkably well informed or something peculiar is happening. The summer heat made business transactions sluggish and social interactions uncomfortable, creating an atmosphere where unusual occurrences could be dismissed as heat-induced confusion. It was in this environment that the first strange reports about the Kellner Brothers began to surface. The first truly disturbing incident occurred on August 15th, 1873, during a business meeting at the Cotton Exchange. Savannah's most prominent merchants had gathered to discuss crop, forecasts, and shipping arrangements for the fall cotton season. The meeting was supposed to be private, limited to established cotton factors and their trusted associates. At approximately 10:00 a.m. Mr. Samuel Peton noticed Heinrich Kellner sitting near the back of the room taking notes, despite not being on the invitation list. Heinrich was dressed in a dark business suit and appeared to be following the discussion with intense interest, occasionally nodding as if he possessed intimate knowledge of the matters being discussed. When Peton quietly inquired about Heinrich's presence, he discovered something that made him deeply uncomfortable. 3 other men, banker Robert Morrison, merchant Theodore Farnsworth, and shipping agent Dr. Edmund Cuthers, each claimed they had personally invited Heinrich after morning business conversations. But here's where the situation becomes impossible to explain rationally. Each man described completely different meetings with Heinrich that morning, occurring at different locations around the same time. Morrison insisted he had met Heinrich at the Planters Bank at 8:30 a.m. to discuss commercial loans. Farnsworth claimed he had encountered Heinrich at the shipping office at 8:45 a.m. to review cargo insurance policies. Dr. Carras reported meeting Heinrich at 9:00 a.m. to discuss investment opportunities in his medical practice. The physical descriptions all 4 men provided were identical: approximately 60 tall, lean build, well-groomed appearance, and wearing the same dark wool suit despite the August heat. Each noted that Heinrich spoke with a slight German accent and demonstrated sophisticated knowledge of their respective business areas. During the Cotton Exchange meeting, Heinrich approached various attendees with conversation that revealed impossible knowledge of their private affairs. He mentioned to banker Morrison that recent gold shipments had arrived safely, referring to information that was supposed to be confidential. He asked merchant Farnsworth about a contract dispute that had been settled in private negotiations just that morning. Most unsettling was Heinrich's conversation with Colonel William Vandenberg, a prominent cotton factor. Heinrich approached him during a break and said, "Colonel, I trust your Charleston business arrangements are proceeding smoothly. It would be unfortunate if complications arose with such profitable ventures." Colonel Vandenberg felt his blood run cold. He had indeed been involved in questionable deals in Charleston, transactions that could damage his reputation if they became public knowledge. The arrangements had been discussed only in private meetings that no outsider should have known about. "How could you know about such matters?" Vandenberg demanded. Heinrich smiled pleasantly. "In business, Colonel, information is valuable currency. Successful merchants learned to listen carefully and observe closely. As the meeting concluded, several attendees compared their experiences and discovered the impossible timeline. Heinrich had apparently conducted detailed business discussions at multiple locations across Savannah during overlapping time periods, each conversation requiring extensive knowledge and careful attention. That evening, an emergency gathering of prominent businessmen was called to discuss what they were calling the German situation. The consensus was that either they were all suffering from collective confusion, or something very strange was happening that threatened their business security. Sheriff Marcus Redmond was contacted and briefed on the situation, beginning an investigation that would uncover one of the most sophisticated criminal schemes in Georgia's history. Sheriff Redmond's investigation began on August 20, 1873, when he could no longer dismiss the mounting reports as simple business rivalry or immigrant prejudice. Armed with detailed statements from over a dozen prominent citizens, he decided to observe the Kellner family directly. The sheriff's first discovery was troubling. The brothers maintained schedules that seemed to defy physical limitations. His deputy, James Fairfax, reported observing Heinrich leaving the family's Bull Street house at 8:00 a.m. Yet, reliable witnesses consistently reported seeing him conducting business across town throughout the morning. "I watched him enter the Cotton Exchange at 900. Deputy Fairfax wrote in his log. Hay remained inside for what appeared to be a 2-hour meeting. Yet during that exact time period, I received reports from trustworthy sources that he was simultaneously at the shipping office in the bank. Sheriff Redmond decided to confront the family directly. On August 25th, he visited their Bull Street residence, hoping to find reasonable explanations for what was becoming a public concern about basic reality. Klaus Kellner received the sheriff in a well-appointed parlor filled with European furniture and business correspondence. Sheriff Redmond Klaus said in accented English, "I understand there have been some misunderstandings about my son's business activities. I'm sure any confusion can be clarified." When the sheriff requested to speak with all 4 sons, Klaus seemed hesitant. "My boys maintain very busy schedules, Sheriff. They are currently engaged in various business appointments throughout the city." But within 30 minutes, all 4 brothers had returned to the house, arriving separately, but within minutes of each other. When questioned about their morning activities, their responses were perfectly coordinated. "We maintain detailed schedules to avoid conflicts," Heinrich explained smoothly. "Our business operations require careful coordination to ensure we don't duplicate efforts or create confusion among our clients." Sheriff Redmond noticed something deeply disturbing about their interactions. The brothers communicated through subtle signals, slight gestures, brief eye contact, and barely perceptible nods that seemed to convey complex information without words. Their responses to questions were perfectly synchronized, as if they had rehearsed every possible inquiry. When asked about specific business meetings, each brother provided detailed answers that matched witness statements about impossible simultaneous activities. They seemed to possess complete knowledge of each other's conversations and could seamlessly explain apparent contradictions in their schedules. "Mr. Heinrich," Sheriff Redmond said, "several reliable witnesses place you at the Cotton Exchange this morning from 9 to 1100. Yet other, equally reliable sources insist you were at the shipping office during the same period. How do you explain this?" Heinrich responded with unshakable confidence. "I believe there may be confusion about dates. Sheriff business meetings can seem similar when people recall them weeks later. If you check with those gentlemen again, I'm certain you'll find our schedules are perfectly consistent. But Sheriff Redmond had verified the dates and times with multiple independent sources. The encounters had definitely occurred simultaneously, yet Heinrich was responding as if such precision was perfectly normal. Over the following weeks, Sheriff Redmond expanded his investigation to include surveillance of the entire family. What he discovered revealed a level of coordination that challenged his understanding of human capability. Hidden in Klaus Kellner's study, the sheriff found business correspondence that used unusual terminology. Letters discussed client assessments, security evaluations, and opportunity schedules, language that seemed more suitable for criminal planning than legitimate commerce. More disturbing were detailed notes about prominent Savannah families. The files contained information about daily routines, financial situations, business relationships, and personal secrets that could only have been gathered through systematic observation and careful listening. Sheriff Redmond realized the Kellner brothers were conducting intelligence operations that went far beyond normal business research. They were gathering information that could be used to exploit vulnerabilities, blackmail prominent citizens, or plan criminal activities. The sheriff also discovered that similar reports were coming from other cities. Telegraph communications with law enforcement in Charleston, Augusta, and Atlanta revealed that identical German brothers had been conducting similar activities in those locations, always appearing to possess impossible knowledge and maintaining impossible schedules. Sheriff Redmond's expanding investigation revealed that the Kellner brothers had developed what appeared to be the most sophisticated criminal deception scheme in American history. Their ability to appear in multiple locations simultaneously was not supernatural. It was the result of meticulous planning and perfect coordination. The breakthrough came when Deputy Fairfax observed something crucial during his surveillance. While watching Heinrich enter a business meeting at the Cotton Exchange, the deputy noticed another figure, dressed identically, entering the shipping office 3 blocks away at exactly the same time. The distance made it impossible for one person to be in both locations. Yet, both figures moved with Heinrich's distinctive mannerisms. Sheriff Redmond realized that the brothers were using their identical appearance to create elaborate deceptions. They could attend multiple meetings simultaneously. By carefully coordinating their schedules and sharing information about their conversations. To outside observers, it appeared that one person was conducting impossible amounts of business, but the sophistication of their scheme went far beyond simple impersonation. The brothers had developed a system for sharing detailed information about their individual conversations, allowing each to speak knowledgeably about encounters they hadn't personally experienced. The sheriff's investigation revealed that they maintained detailed written records of every conversation, every piece of information gathered, and every business relationship established. These records were shared among all 4 brothers, creating the illusion that each possessed omniscient knowledge of Savannah's business and social networks. More disturbing was their systematic approach to gathering sensitive information. Heinrich focused on banking and financial intelligence, learning about loans, investments, and monetary transactions. Wilhelm specialized in shipping and transportation, documenting cargo schedules, warehouse operations, and travel patterns. Friedrich concentrated on social intelligence, attending gatherings where he could overhear private conversations and family secrets. Gustav managed their information-sharing system and identified opportunities for exploitation. Sheriff Redmond discovered that the brothers had been recruiting accomplices among Savannah's working class. Servants, clerks, dock workers, and delivery boys were being paid small amounts to report on their employers' activities, providing the brothers with insider information about prominent families' private affairs. The intelligence network they had created allowed them to know about business deals before they were finalized, family problems before they became public, and financial difficulties before creditors were informed. This advanced knowledge gave them enormous advantages in their business negotiations and social interactions. But Sheriff Redmond's most disturbing discovery was evidence that the brothers were planning to exploit their intelligence gathering for criminal purposes. Hidden documents suggested they were identifying targets for robbery, blackmail, and fraud based on the vulnerabilities they had discovered. Wealthy families who kept large amounts of cash at home, businesses with poor security, and individuals with secrets they would pay to protect had all been systematically catalogued. The brothers weren't just conducting unusual business practices. They were preparing for a coordinated criminal assault on Savannah's most prominent citizens. On October 10, 1873, Sheriff Redmond's fears were confirmed when the Vandenberg family became victims of the most precisely planned robbery in the city's history. The robbery of the Vandenberg mansion on October 10, 1873 demonstrated the full extent of the Kellner Brothers' intelligence-gathering operation. Colonel Augustus Vandenberg had been hosting a dinner party for Savannah's business elite when thieves gained access to his private study and opened his supposedly secure safe. The robbery was executed with surgical precision. The criminals knew exactly where to find the hidden safe and knew the combination that only the colonel and his wife possessed, and knew which specific items to take while leaving behind obvious valuables that would have slowed their escape. When Colonel Vandenberg discovered the theft the next morning, he was baffled by the thieves' detailed knowledge. "They took documents that could ruin me if made public," he told Sheriff Redmond, "but they ignored jewelry and silver worth twice as much. Whoever did this understood my business better than my own partners." Sheriff Redmond's investigation revealed something even more disturbing. Multiple guests at the dinner party reported seeing one of the Kellner brothers during the evening. Despite the fact that no German family had been invited, Heinrich had apparently been moving through the house, engaging guests in conversation while systematically gathering information about the layout and security arrangements. Mrs. Adelaide Whitman, the colonel's sister-in-law, remembered speaking with a polite German gentleman who seemed to know everyone at the party. He asked such intelligent questions about Papa's business, she recalled. "I thought it was charming how interested he was in our family's affairs." But other guests described encounters with the same person in different parts of the house at overlapping times. The butler saw him in the kitchen, asking about service schedules. The groundskeeper spotted him near the stable inquiring about security routines. Several guests encountered him on the second floor, where he was supposedly admiring family portraits, while actually studying the house's layout. Sheriff Redmond realized that the Kellner brothers had used their identical appearance to conduct reconnaissance during the dinner party itself. While one brother mingled with guests downstairs, others had been mapping the house's layout and identifying vulnerabilities. The precision of the robbery suggested months of preparation. The thieves had known which documents were most valuable, where they were stored, and how to access them without triggering the Connell security measures. This level of planning required systematic intelligence gathering that went far beyond casual observation. Over the following weeks, similar incidents occurred throughout Savannah. Wealthy families found themselves victims of robberies that demonstrated impossible knowledge of their private affairs. Businesses discovered that competitors possessed information about their confidential operations. Prominent citizens received anonymous letters threatening to expose embarrassing secrets unless payments were made. Sheriff Redmond understood that the Kellner brothers had weaponized their intelligence network for systematic criminal exploitation. They weren't just unusual businessmen. They were sophisticated criminals who had spent months preparing for coordinated attacks on Savannah's most vulnerable targets. The sheriff decided to set a trap. He spread carefully crafted rumors about a wealthy merchant family planning to display valuable jewelry at an upcoming social gathering. Then he positioned deputies throughout the city to watch for any of the Kellner brothers conducting surveillance of the supposed target. What happened next confirmed Sheriff Redmond's worst suspicions about the brothers' capabilities. On the night of the fabricated event, deputies stationed at 4 different locations reported simultaneous sightings of Heinrich Kellner. At 8:00 p.m., he was observed near the supposed target house, apparently conducting reconnaissance. At the same time, he was seen at the train station, seemingly preparing to leave town. Deputies also spotted him at the docks, talking to ship captains about passage, and at a tavern near the German district, meeting with known criminal associates. Each deputy provided identical descriptions and was absolutely certain of his identification. The sightings were physically impossible for one person, yet the evidence was overwhelming. Sheriff Redmond realized he was dealing with criminal capabilities that challenged every assumption about law enforcement and criminal investigation. The sheriff contacted federal authorities requesting assistance with what had become a threat to public order and commercial confidence. If the Kellner brothers could continue their operations with impunity, no business or family in Savannah would be safe from their systematic exploitation. On November 15, 1873, Detective Inspector William Carrington arrived from the Pinkerton Detective Agency with a mandate to solve what was becoming known as the Impossible Brothers case. Detective Carrington brought with him investigative techniques that were revolutionary for 1873, including systematic photography and detailed surveillance methods. His first step was to establish round-the-clock observation of all 4 brothers simultaneously, something local law enforcement had been unable to accomplish. Carrington divided his team of 6 Pinkerton agents into 3 shifts, with 2 agents assigned to monitor the Kellner house at all times, while the others rotated surveillance of individual brothers throughout the city. For the first time, law enforcement had enough manpower to track all 4 brothers' movements simultaneously and document their impossible coordination. The detectives' first major discovery came after just 3 days of professional surveillance. Agent Thomas Burke, positioned with a telescope on the roof of a building overlooking Bull Street, observed Heinrich leaving the Kellner house at 8:15 a.m. on November 18th. At precisely the same moment, Agent Michael Donovan, stationed near the Cotton Exchange, reported Heinrich entering that building for a scheduled business meeting. "It's impossible," Burke reported to Carrington that evening. "I watched Heinrich walk north on Bull Street at 8:15. He was wearing a dark blue coat and carrying a leather portfolio. Donovan swears he saw the same man entering the cotton exchange at 8015, wearing identical clothing and carrying the same portfolio. The distance between these locations is 12 blocks. No man could cover that distance in 0 time. But Carrington's systematic approach revealed something even more intriguing. When agents compared their detailed written observations, they discovered that the brothers were following precisely timed schedules that created what appeared to be impossible simultaneous appearances. Heinrich would leave the house at exactly 80:15, arriving at the carton exchange at 8045 for a scheduled meeting. During that same 3-minute window, Wilhelm would arrive at the shipping office for his own appointment, but he would be wearing clothing identical to what Heinrich had been observed wearing when leaving the house. The detective realized that the brothers were not just using their identical appearance. They were coordinating their clothing, accessories, and even the items they carried to ensure that witnesses would describe identical details when questioned. A leather portfolio carried by Heinrich in the morning would be passed to Wilhelm for his afternoon appointments, creating the illusion that the same person was conducting business throughout the day. Carrington's team also discovered that the brothers had developed an elaborate system of communication that allowed them to share information about their individual conversations almost instantly. Hidden observation posts revealed that the brothers used a network of street vendors, messenger boys, and domestic servants to relay detailed information between locations. Young Timothy Boswell, a messenger who worked for several law firms, was observed carrying folded papers between the brothers' various business appointments. When Agent Sarah Mitchell, disguised as a prospective customer, approached Timothy's employer, she learned that the boy was being paid extra to remember important details from conversations he overheard and to deliver those details to specific addresses throughout the city. But the most sophisticated aspect of their operation was the brothers' method of creating alibis. Agent Donovan observed Heinrich attending a business meeting at the Cotton Exchange from 10:00 a.m. to noon on November 20th. During that exact time period, Agent Burke documented Wilhelm visiting 3 different shops on Broughton Street, where he was recognized by shopkeepers who were certain they were dealing with Heinrich Kellner. Wilhelm is using his identical appearance to establish Heinrich's presence in multiple locations, Carrington wrote in his investigation log. While Heinrich conducts legitimate business that creates documented proof of his whereabouts, Wilhelm simultaneously creates witnesses who will swear Heinrich was somewhere else entirely. If Heinrich were ever accused of a crime committed during his documented business meeting, he would have witnesses placing him at innocent locations during the same time period. Detective Carrington's investigation revealed that this alibi system was being used to cover increasingly serious criminal activities. On November 22nd, while Heinrich was observed attending a public meeting at the Merchants Association, a burglary occurred at the Pitton residence that showed intimate knowledge of the family's routines and the location of their valuables. Mrs. Evangeline Pitton reported that the thief had accessed her jewelry box using a key that fit perfectly, suggesting someone had made detailed observations of her daily habits. The burglar had taken only the most valuable pieces, while leaving behind obvious items that would have slowed an escape, behavior that indicated extensive advanced planning. But multiple witnesses placed Heinrich at the Merchants Association meeting during the entire time when the burglary occurred. The meeting had been well attended, with dozens of prominent businessmen who could vouch for Heinrich's presence. The alibi seemed unshakable until Detective Carrington realized that Wilhelm, Friedrich, or Gustav could have committed the burglary, while Heinrich established his public presence elsewhere. The detective's breakthrough came when he decided to test the brothers' coordination directly. On November 25th, Carrington arranged for Sheriff Redmond to visit the Kellner house at exactly 2:00 p.m. with a warrant to question Heinrich about the Peton burglary. At the same time, Agent Burke was positioned to observe Heinrich at a scheduled business meeting at the shipping office. When Sheriff Redmond arrived at the Bull Street house, Heinrich was indeed present and cooperative, expressing surprise about the burglary and providing detailed information about his whereabouts during the time it occurred. But Agent Burke simultaneously observed Heinrich at the shipping office, engaged in a lengthy discussion about cargo insurance policies. Either Heinrich Kellner has mastered the ability to be in two places at once, Sheriff Redmond reported, or we're dealing with criminal deception on a scale I've never encountered. The man I questioned at his house knew details about the Merchants Association meeting that only someone who attended could have known. But Agent Burke swears he observed the same man conducting business across town at the same time. Detective Carrington realized that the brothers had perfected their deception to such a degree that they could maintain alibis even under direct law enforcement scrutiny. Their system of shared information was so sophisticated that each brother could convincingly discuss events he hadn't personally witnessed, creating the illusion that one person was conducting impossible amounts of business. But the detective also understood that this level of coordination required constant communication and precise timing that created vulnerabilities. If law enforcement could disrupt their communication network or catch them during a transition between roles, the entire deception might unravel. On December 1st, 1873, Detective Carrington implemented a plan designed to force the brothers into a situation where their coordination would break down, revealing the true nature of their criminal scheme. Detective Carrington's plan was elegantly simple: create a situation that would require all four brothers to be in specific locations simultaneously, making their deception impossible to maintain. The detective worked with Sheriff Redmond to coordinate what appeared to be routine law enforcement activities that would actually serve as a comprehensive test of the brothers' capabilities. On December 5th, the plan was set in motion. At exactly 10 a.m., Sheriff Redmond visited the Kellner house with a warrant to search the premises for stolen goods, requiring all family members to remain present during the search. Simultaneously, Federal Bank Examiner Robert Hayes, actually Agent Donovan in disguise, arrived at the Planters Bank with urgent questions about Heinrich's recent financial transactions that required his immediate presence. At the same time, Customs Inspector William Clark, Agent Burke, in disguise, appeared at the shipping office, demanding that Wilhelm provide documentation about recent cargo manifests, claiming federal authorities had received reports of smuggling activities. Meanwhile, Agent Mitchell, posing as a legal representative, arrived at the courthouse, requiring Friedrich's immediate testimony about a business dispute that could result in federal charges if he failed to appear. The simultaneous demands created an impossible situation for the brothers. They could not physically be in 4 different locations at the same time, yet each situation required their personal presence and could not be delegated or postponed without arousing serious suspicion. Detective Carrington positioned himself where he could observe the Kellner house during Sheriff Redmond's search. What he witnessed revealed the true extent of the brothers' desperation and criminal sophistication. At 10:00 a.m. sharp, all four brothers were indeed present at the house when Sheriff Redmond arrived. They cooperated fully with the search, maintaining their typical coordinated responses and identical mannerisms. But Carrington observed something crucial. The brothers were exhibiting signs of extreme stress that they had never displayed during previous encounters with law enforcement. Hinrich's hands trembled slightly as he provided documents requested by the sheriff. Wilhelm repeatedly glanced at the window as if calculating escape routes. Friedrich seemed unusually talkative, volunteering information about business activities that hadn't been requested. Gustav remained silent, but his eyes darted constantly between his brothers and the law enforcement officers. But the most revealing moment came when a messenger arrived at the house, claiming to have urgent business communications for Heinrich. The brothers exchanged glances that seemed to communicate complex information in seconds, and Heinrich immediately declared that he needed to leave for an important business appointment that could not be delayed. "I'm afraid that's not possible," Sheriff Redmond replied firmly. "This search warrant requires all residents to remain present until we've completed our examination of the premises." Hinrich's response revealed the first crack in the brothers' perfectly coordinated facade. "Sheriff, you don't understand. I have legal obligations that supersede your warrant. Federal business cannot be delayed for local law enforcement procedures." It was the first time any of the brothers had shown anything less than complete cooperation with law enforcement. Heinrich's obvious distress suggested that the simultaneous demands on their time had created a crisis they couldn't resolve through their usual methods. Over the next 2 hours, messengers continued arriving at the house with increasingly urgent requests for the brothers' presence at various locations throughout the city. Each message created additional stress, and Carrington observed the brothers' coordination beginning to deteriorate under pressure. Wilhelm began answering questions intended for Friedrich. Gustav responded to Hinrich's name when called by the sheriff. Most significantly, their perfectly synchronized mannerisms started showing subtle variations as their stress increased. At noon, the breaking point was reached when Agent Donovan, still disguised as Federal Bank Examiner Hayes, arrived at the house, demanding Heinrich's immediate presence at the bank to resolve what he claimed were serious federal violations that could result in criminal charges. "Mr. Kellner," Agent Donovan announced, "federal banking regulations require your personal testimony about these transactions. Failure to comply within the hour will result in federal warrants being issued." Heinrich's response revealed the desperation that had been building throughout the morning. "There must be some mistake. I can provide any documentation you require right here. There's no need for me to leave this location." But Agent Donovan pressed his advantage. "Sir, federal law requires personal testimony at the bank location where the questioned transactions occurred. The federal authorities will not accept anything less than your physical presence at the bank within 1 hour." The impossible demand finally shattered the brothers' coordination. Hinrich looked to his brothers for guidance, but their usual silent communication system appeared to have broken down under stress. For the first time since the investigation began, the four brothers seemed like separate individuals rather than components of a coordinated unit. It was Gustav who finally revealed the truth, apparently deciding that cooperation might be preferable to whatever consequences they were facing. "Sheriff," he said quietly, We need to explain something about our business methods. Gustav's decision to cooperate marked the end of the Kellner Brothers' 18-month criminal operation and the beginning of confessions that revealed the full scope of their sophisticated deception scheme. Over the following days, each brother provided detailed accounts of their methods, motivations, and the crimes they had committed throughout Savannah. Heinrich, as the apparent leader of their operation, provided the most comprehensive explanation of their techniques. We realized early that our identical appearance was an advantage that could be exploited, he told Detective Carrington during questioning. If people couldn't tell us apart, we could create alibis and gather information in ways that would be impossible for normal criminals. Heinrich's confession revealed that the brothers had been planning their Savannah operation for over 2 years before arriving in the city. They had studied newspaper reports about the local business community, corresponded with potential accomplices, and even sent advanced scouts to gather preliminary intelligence about security and law enforcement capabilities. We chose Savannah specifically because it was large enough to provide substantial opportunities, but small enough that we could systematically map the entire social and commercial network. Heinrich explained, why needed a community where we could establish ourselves quickly, but where law enforcement lacked the resources to investigate complex criminal schemes? Wilhelm's confession focused on the practical aspects of their coordination. We developed a system of precise timing and information sharing that allowed us to maintain the illusion that one person was conducting multiple activities. He told Sheriff Redmond, every conversation, every piece of information, every detail of our individual activities was recorded and shared with the others immediately. Wilhelm revealed that the brothers maintained detailed written logs of every interaction they had with Savannah residents. These logs included personal information, business details, family secrets, and vulnerabilities that could be exploited for criminal purposes. The information was so comprehensive that any brother could speak knowledgeably about relationships and conversations he hadn't personally experienced. We treated information like currency. Wilhelm explained, the more we knew about people's private affairs, the more we could manipulate them for our purposes. People trusted us because we seemed to understand their business better than their own partners. Friedrich's confession revealed the psychological aspects of their operation. We learned to study people's behavior, identify their weaknesses, and exploit their assumptions about identity and memory. He told Detective Carrington, people see what they expect to see. If they expected to meet Heinrich, they would interpret any of us as Heinrich, even if there were subtle differences. Friedrich described techniques they had developed for reading facial expressions, voice patterns, and body language that allowed them to gather information during casual conversations. They had become expert at asking leading questions that encouraged people to reveal private information without realizing they were being manipulated. Most people want to talk about themselves and their problems, Friedrich explained. We simply provided opportunities for them to share information while making them feel like we were genuinely interested in their success and well-being. Gustav's confession focused on their criminal activities and the specific crimes they had committed. We stole approximately 78,000 in cash, jewelry, and valuable documents over 18 months, he told federal authorities. We also extorted 12,000 through blackmail schemes based on embarrassing secrets we discovered about prominent families. Gustav provided detailed information about their burglary techniques, which relied heavily on advanced intelligence gathering. "We never robbed anyone without spending weeks studying their routines, their security measures, and their most valuable possessions," he explained. "By the time we entered someone's home, we knew exactly where to find what we wanted and how to avoid detection." The brothers' confessions also revealed that their criminal activities had been escalating toward more serious crimes. They had been planning a coordinated series of bank robberies and potentially kidnapping schemes that would have targeted the children of wealthy families for ransom. "We were running out of opportunities for simple burglary and extortion," Hinrich admitted. "Savannah was becoming too familiar with our methods, and we needed larger scores to justify the risks we were taking." Detective Carrington's investigation revealed that the brothers had been preparing to leave Savannah and establish similar operations in Charleston or Atlanta. They had already begun developing new identities and establishing preliminary contacts in those cities when law enforcement pressure made their departure necessary. The trial of the Kellner brothers began in Savannah's federal court on February 20th, 1874. The case attracted significant attention throughout Georgia and established legal precedents for prosecuting sophisticated fraud schemes that exploited human psychology and perception. Judge Samuel Morrison presided over proceedings that lasted 6 weeks and included testimony from over 60 witnesses. The prosecution, led by federal attorney Jonathan Hayes, focused on the systematic nature of the brothers' crimes and their exploitation of public trust. These defendants didn't simply commit robbery, Attorney Hayes argued in his opening statement. They conducted a coordinated assault on the basic foundations of social trust and commercial confidence. Their crimes threatened the very fabric of community cooperation that makes civilized society possible. The defense, led by attorney Marcus Williams, argued that the brothers' techniques, while unusual, constituted fraud rather than the more serious charges of conspiracy and criminal enterprise that federal prosecutors had filed. "My clients are guilty of theft and deception," Williams conceded, but their methods, however sophisticated, represent individual criminal acts rather than the kind of organized conspiracy that federal charges require. But the prosecution's evidence, including the detailed logs and records seized from the Kellner house, demonstrated that the brothers' activities constituted the most sophisticated criminal organization ever documented in Georgia. Their systematic approach to intelligence gathering, coordination of alibis, and exploitation of multiple victims over an extended period clearly met federal standards for organized criminal enterprise. Hinrich, Wilhelm, Friedrich, and Gustav Kellner were convicted on all charges after jury deliberation lasting 2 days. Judge Morrison sentenced each brother to 12 years imprisonment, noting that their crimes represented a new category of criminal sophistication that required severe penalties to deter similar schemes. The defendants have demonstrated that traditional assumptions about criminal capability are no longer adequate, Judge Morrison stated during sentencing. Their systematic exploitation of human psychology and perception requires law enforcement to develop new investigative techniques and legal frameworks. The brothers served their sentences at separate federal facilities to prevent them from coordinating any escape attempts or continuing their criminal cooperation. Hinrich and Wilhelm were released after serving 10 years, with 2 years reduced for good behavior and cooperation with ongoing investigations. Friedrich served his full 12-year sentence, refusing to provide additional cooperation beyond his initial confession. Gostov died in prison in 1881 from tuberculosis, apparently never adapting to the isolation and regimentation of federal incarceration. After their release, Heinrich and Wilhelm disappeared from public records, apparently establishing new identities and leaving no trace of their subsequent activities. Friedrich returned to Germany after his release, but German authorities reported no criminal activities associated with his name. The brothers' subsequent fates remain unknown, though law enforcement agencies occasionally investigated reports of similar criminal schemes that might have involved their participation. The stolen assets were partially recovered through the brothers' cooperation and Detective Carrington's investigation of their financial networks. Approximately 35,000 in cash and jewelry was returned to victims. Though many families never recovered their losses completely, the brothers had converted much of their stolen wealth into gold and currency that was hidden in locations they refused to reveal. Detective Carrington's investigation techniques and documentation methods became standard practices for complex criminal cases throughout the Southeast. His detailed approach to surveillance, witness interviews, and evidence analysis influenced law enforcement